cards. Jack Spade back here with you with High Noon Leatherworks, ready to start another project. So hopefully you saw the knife sheath project. I've shipped that off to the Bell Boys down in Kentucky, and I'm real anxious to see what they think of that when they get it. So make sure you go over and check out their channel, The Bell Life, and the Bell Life vlogs. So I'm going to start a new project today. I'm going to make a woman's Western cowboy billfold. So it will be a little bit different than this one because it will have a fold over that'll snap, and the inside will be different than this one, but I'm just going to kind of use this as a guide as far as size and maybe part of my pattern. And then the front, I'm going to totally do a different style front. So why don't you come on in a little closer and we'll get started. Alright, I've got some pattern material here. Again, this is just poster board, white. I pick it up at the dollar store. I think I could get I don't know, it's a 20 by 24 piece maybe. I think they're 50 cents a piece. You get two for $1. Make a lot of patterns out of them, and the nice thing about it is they hold up, so you can use them over and over and over. Every time I make a pattern out of this, I always mark on it exactly what it was for, and then I store them in a file that I have, an expandable file. Then I can go back and I can pull from those. Maybe sometimes I'll use an old pattern that I have in my file and just tweak it a little bit for something else. So again, I'm going to use this wallet basically as a pattern for ladies' cowboy wallet. The one that we're going to make will have a flap that folds over and snaps, so that'll keep anything from falling out if she puts it down in a purse or something like that. I am going to make card holders, but they're going to be different than this. You can see these are vertical. When those go in, that goes in a man's pocket, back pocket, that keeps cards from sliding out. I'm going to make, on these, I'm going to make them horizontal, so that when you pop the snap and open it, it'll come down like this, and then there will be a pocket here for cards, one here for cards or ID, there will be one here, and then there will be one over here. So there will actually be 4 of those pockets to put cards or IDs or stuff like that. Then there will be a larger flap back here to put bills. So I'm going to use this as a pattern because I know it's a good size for money to fit in, for cards to fit in. So we'll get started with just outlining the pattern. And again, just like leather, I want to make the best use of my pattern material, make it last, and get as many patterns out of it as possible. And I'll lay this out and I'll just trace around it. Right now I'm just using a pencil. You could use a marker, a pen, whatever you're comfortable with. And all that'll do is give us our outline. I am also going to be making this out of a little thicker leather than what this was made out of. This is fairly light, thin leather. So I'm going to make this one a little bit thicker. So I'll take my straight edge And I'll go ahead and cut this main pattern out because I want that to be one piece. Now, the thing about, I can go ahead and add my flap now to my pattern and cut it out so that entirely becomes one piece, or I could cut it out separately after I cut this pattern out and then tape them together with clear box tape. You've seen me do that before. But I think what I'll do is actually add that on so that it becomes a full piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down from the top. I'm going to come down, oh, let's say an inch on each side from the top, make a mark, then I'm going to draw that across, and I'll show you what I'm doing here in just a second. And all that's going to be is a reference mark, because I will have a fold in here also. But what I want to do is bring this down to that mark, this inside part right here, where you can open it up and put bills and such. I'm going to bring that down to that line. Make sure my bottom's lined up so that I'm square. And then I'm going to go ahead and trace that just like I did the other part of the wallet. And I'll show you what I end up with there. So this is my inch that I came down from the top, this line right here. Then I laid that wallet where that money flap was, or that opening, right across that line, and that gave me my flap. Now I don't want my flap that folds over and snaps over here. It's going to fold over like this and snap. I don't want that to cover the whole face or be square. I want it to be a little decorative. So what I'll do is I'll take a French curve, and I've got several of them here. You can buy them at hobby supply stores. I believe I got these at Hobby Lobby. But you can use these French curves, different sizes and shapes, and you can make different shapes for your leather patterns. So I'm going to measure this and find center. 3.5. 8. So I'll find my center of my wallet, and I'll mark that, and I'll show that to you. You can see I marked the center from side to side. And what I want to do is start looking through my French curves and see what kind of shapes I can get. And I can do it, this would give me a point at the top if I do it like that. Give me a nice curve at the bottom. So I think I'll start there, and let's see what happens. Give it a trace along this line. Now obviously I won't leave that at a point. I'll have to flip it over for the other side. And again, I won't leave that at the top. I'll show you here in a second what I'll do. I'm trying not to get my arm in the way, but I know that's difficult. I need to get my camera back up above. So you can see what that French curve does for me from each side. So it gives me a rounded edge from the top mark. Then what I need to do is work on this up here. So it looks like may end up, we'll see here in a minute when we cut out our pattern, but it looks like it may come down around halfway, which is okay. It won't cover up the majority of the front of my wallet. And take a look at the other French curves we have as far as getting a rounded tip here. That looks pretty good. So I'll draw that in to meet the line. Put my French curves out of the way so I don't knock them off my workbench. I'm going to cut this excess of this poster board off now that I know what I need to work with here. And I can get that out of the way. And this gives you a pretty good idea of what that circle did. So we'll make a nice flap. So let's cut that out. I think what I may do is go ahead, and I like to go over it with ink pen before I cut them out. And it does, especially on this cutting mat, it allows it to depress into the cardboard a little bit, into the poster board. It gives me a nice line to follow. And this will end up giving me a nice straight line. So anywhere it might have been a little wavy because I was following the piece of leather instead of a perfect straight edge, now this will give me a perfect straight edge. And I will do the folding part also. So let's open that wallet back up, lay it back on our pattern, and I'm going to mark the center where I want that to fold. And then I'll double check it. I could have just measured it, but I'll double check it with my ruler. And that looks like the total is 7 5/8. So it would be 3 1/2, and then 5/16, 3 1/2, and I'm right on it, right where I had my mark. So I'll make a mark on the other side, and I'll draw my straight line across the center where it's going to fold. And when I cut that out, that'll allow that to fold easy. And we'll see when I cut the pattern out how close it is to being perfectly straight or square. And if it's not perfectly square, we can tweak that after we fold it over. So we can trim anything off that's excess or sticks out. That gives us our bottom section top section, and here's our flap. So all I'll do is freehand these corners with my ink pen, and I'm following the pencil mark that I drew on there. Then I can use my straight edge again. And then in the corners of my flap, follow those pencil lines again. And over the top. So there's my outlined pattern. There's the fold, there's the flap. So when I cut this out, I should be able to fold that over and it give you an idea what it's going to look like. So let's go ahead and cut that out. Again, by using that ink pen and pressing fairly hard, it makes a great guide for your knife on this self-healing pad. Your knife wants to follow that line very easily. You could use a straight edge, but I normally just, once I outline my pattern with the ballpoint pen, it just follows, my knife just follows right along that mark or that line that I've put in there. Even on curves, it does a really good job of following that line. Yeah, I've mentioned this before, but the key to getting good round cuts, whether it's leather or your pattern, is to make sure that you keep moving your piece. Don't try to twist your whole body or your arm or your wrist and try to cut in an awkward position. Keep turning your piece, that pattern material, and it'll make it much easier to cut your pattern out. So I'll take this piece, trash it. I ended up with a small piece. This will be enough to make my pattern for my card holders. And then I do have some slight trimming to do on my corners. You can see I need to trim those corners off. And again, if you turn your pattern material where it's comfortable for you, you can cut in the most comfortable direction, and it'll make your cut nice and smooth. It'll make your corners nice and round. They won't be jagged. So that leaves me with a couple of pieces of scrap here. Move them out of the way. And then let's see what we end up with when we fold this over. looks like it's just a little off on our center line. The rest of it looks fairly square. So what I'll do is I'll make another line right next to it, just up a ways to meet this line down here. And what that does is that's going to give me just a little bit of positioning where I can turn that. And rebend the corner or the fold. Then once I get it where I want it, I can make that hard crease in there. I normally do that with the back of my thumbnail, or you could use a folding piece of bone. Here's a piece of deer antler that's perfect for that. See how it's curved? Now it's got a curve in it. Just use the smooth side back here, and let me see if I can switch hands here and show you. And then you just smooth that fold out. Then we want to come back on this side, I think. And we want to trim just a hair off of this other side. I think what I'll do is actually use my straight edge and make sure I get a good straight line. And I'll do the same when I trim this. Notice I turn, this is a cork back ruler, so it doesn't slide on whatever it is you're trying to cut. But sometimes if I want a real intricate close cut, I'll turn it over so that my stainless steel side's down. That way I don't have that thickness of that cork. So I get a good straight cut. And then I'll go back to my corners, take another look at those, make sure that they're nice and round. Because when I cut that or trim that off, that changes my corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of these cutting tools for a strap or a belt, and that way I get all my corners exactly the same. Well, really I just have two now to match up, because the other two are on the flap. So I'll use that as a guide on my corners. Again, you're going to tweak this a little bit as you go, especially when you're using a finished product like that you've found or borrowed or as a pattern, because your raw materials are going to be a little bit different as they get finished than if you were just making this by scratch. So you can see those turned out nice and round, and then that's what it looks like when it's folded. So you can see I'm away from that line a little bit now, where before I was right on it. So this is going to make it a little difficult to make my fold. I can lay my line straight edge right on that line that inked line, and pull that right up to that, and that way I know I'm folding right on the same line that I drew across. Again, if I want to smooth my fold down, you can use anything with a smooth edge. And then there's what it would look like. And it would have, obviously, let's see, I can use this shell casing, kind of give you an idea. If I'm not too radical here as I trace it. And that'll give you an idea where the snap's going to go. So that's our basic wallet pattern. So that gives us one piece of leather to work from. Then we can add our other pieces to that when we go to put in our card holders. So that'll be the next thing we do, is our card holders. So we'll set this aside, get this other piece, and I believe I'll use a thinner piece of leather for the inside for the card holders. So the outside will be fairly thick, then the inside for the card holders to slide in and out, they'll be thinner leather. And what that'll allow to do is to be able to stretch a little bit more and put more cards inside there. Let me get a card and I'll be right back. Alright, I've got a card, and this is the same, it's just a prescription card, but it's the same size as your bank cards, your credit cards, and this one's a little bit of plastic perforation left on it. I'm just cleaning that off with a knife so I don't have those little divots when I go use it as a pattern. So what I want to do is I want to use this card to draw out my pattern for my card holders inside my wallet, but I want to make sure that when I draw this out, I leave plenty of room for those cards to slide in and out, and that to hold multiple cards. So it has to be able to give a little bit. If I make it the same size as this card, first of all, you'll have a really hard time getting the card in there because you're going to have to sew it on there somehow. So you have to leave room for sewing also. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll actually trace the card onto my pattern material. In this case, it's the same poster board that I used for the wallet. So that's all I need the card for, is to get the shape. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 1/8 of an inch on each side for those cards to expand. You know, so you could fit maybe 3 cards in a card holder, and if you're going to have 4, that's 12 cards. I can't imagine anybody carrying more than that. I mean, it's possible, but this one's going to hold that many. So what I'll do is I'll give it 1/8 of an inch for expansion. Then I'll give it 1/8 of an inch for extra leather around the card in order for me to sew it. So do that. I'll mark it at the top, so 1/4 inch away from each edge, and the same at the bottom. So that I can get a straight line. So let me draw my line. And it doesn't matter if you go past the card outline, because actually I'm going to make these square. I'm not going to round the corners. Then I'll do the same on the bottom. So that'll allow the cards to expand at the bottom also. So we'll do 1/4 inch, because they'll also be sewn at the bottom. So this will be a rectangle piece of leather. And then I'll do a dotted line across the top. And I will come down about 1/4 inch, because you don't want your cards to fit completely in that card pouch all the way down in there. You won't be able to see what cards are in what pouch. So at least let them stick out a little bit so you can kind of take your finger and look through them so you know you're pulling out the right card. You don't have to pull out all your cards every single time. And what I'll do is I'll make that a dotted line, or a dashed line. So you can see this is my bottom, my sides, straight lines. You can see the card shape inside, and then there's the top. Now, here's the thing on the top. I want to leave or cut a relief in the top so that you could actually get your thumb and pull the cards out. If you don't do that, it's going to be real difficult to try to get your fingers in there and pull those cards out, especially if you get them stuffed in there pretty tight. So I want to put a little relief in there. You could do just a half circle. I've got a little piece of plastic here I took off of some kind of tool or something that a lot of times you just don't think about it. Something breaks, you throw it all in the trash. I always try to scavenge anything I can use as a drawing pattern off of anything I'm getting ready to discard. So it looks like this would probably work. Let's try it and see what it looks like. Again, I'm on my pencil, so let's come down a 1/2 inch. Let's do 3/8. 1/2 inch may be a little much. So let's come down 3/8 of an inch. That'll allow you, should allow you plenty of room to get your thumb in there. And then I want to find my center. Which is 1 3/4 of an inch. And I probably ought to straighten my pattern material on my grid, on my cutting mat, and that'll allow me to get my pattern piece straight on my grid. That way I know I'm square and centered. I'll hold that down, and then I'll draw around that pattern piece. Again, that's just something that broke on a tool or something that I had, and I just salvaged it to keep it and use it for later. So let me go ahead, and that turned out great. Let me go ahead and outline that with a pen, and then I can show you what the actual pattern is going to look like. It'll help when you see that. So I'll take I put all of my lines on there, on that pattern material, as I'm thinking this out in pencil. Then once I feel comfortable that I have the lines that I want to cut on for my pattern, that's my final pattern, then I'll come back and I'll use my ink pen, my ballpoint pen. What that does, it gives me perfect, sharp, clear lines to cut on, so I can make my pattern. And I'll follow again with the ink pen on my pattern piece. That way I don't have to try to just sketch it freehand. That gives you a really good idea now what that's going to look like. So let's cut that out with our razor knife. Again, using that ballpoint pen places a small indentation into that poster board. And I am using the non-coated side of the poster board to do all my drawing on. If you use the slick side, sometimes you really have some problems with your pencil lines. So I always try to make sure I stick with the dull side, or the uncoated side. Again, when you're cutting curves or corners, make sure that you move your piece so that you stay nice and comfortable while you're cutting. And there it is. So that will be the card holders. Again, when you open this up, there will be one in here. And it looks like I was going to put 4 of them in there, but they're not going to fit. They're going to be too big. So it looks like I'm going to have to put 2. Looks like I'm going to have to put one here and then put one up here. So you're going to end up holding about 6 cards instead of 12. So I could make one big piece. Probably what I need to do is, if I wanted to put 2 of these side by side, I really need to make this wallet a little longer. But on this one, we're going to continue with that pattern. So let's clean this top up. See, it's got just a little piece excess sticking out right here. I cleaned it up. It's in good shape now. See if you can see it behind something darker. So what I need to do is take my original pattern for my wallet and then find my center in there, which is going to be right there. Find the center of my card holder, which this ended up being exactly 2 inches. So it's 4 inches long. So that way I get my card holder perfectly in the center of my wallet. And then measure the bottom to make sure I'm the same on both sides. That's 1/2 inch. Make any tweaks you need to at this point. So then I'll take that pattern and I'm just going to draw out a little pencil mark all the way around that card holder to give me a reference point to where that will end up sewing in there. So that gives me a really good idea where that's going to sew inside there. I'll do the same at the top. And I want these card holders to go the same direction when the wallet's opened up, because when they open this up with a snap and open this wallet up this way, they'll be able to get to their cards and they won't have to turn the wallet over, or some of them fall out if you just have 1 or 2 in there. So I want to make sure that I'm putting them in there in the right direction. And that's why I'm making sure this is straight and square. Then I'll put my reference lines on that one, on the top section. So there's what it will look like. There's the top section, there's the bottom section. And then this will have, on this side, we'll have a place for bills. On this side, we'll have a place for bills. So, thanks for tuning in. and seeing how we're going to do this next project. Again, this is going to be a woman's Western wallet, and we'll add a little bit of flair to it so it's not plain. And come on back to the next episode, and we'll be cutting out the leather and getting all of our pieces together, because this is going to take several pieces to make this wallet. So come on back. Please, as always, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.